Hey everyone, so, welcome back. So in a previous video I said I was going to be just doing a quick rundown of how I do my bases on this army. So these bases are going to, in the future, be under my Infernus Marines. Now the only thing I haven't done on these yet is painting the base rims, but we'll get to that. I'll just show that. So to do this, I have actually 6 separate bases, all at different stages of development, so I can film this all in one shot. And I'm going to break down step by step. But this is ultimately the end goal. So first, I'm going to show you what I use to make this. So, as a really quick thing, here's everything needed to make the bases, other than obviously the base itself. Since this is for Infernus Marines, they're using 32mm bases. So, for the basing materials, I use Vallejo Earth Texture Black Lava Asphalt, and their diorama effects for snow. It covered up because I actually broke the case, so it's just diorama effect snow. And cork tiles I use to make the rocks on the base. And then I use Army Painter's Winter Tufts for the grass. Gives it a nice dried look. Then for the paints, I use dark warm gray and bright neutral gray from Pro Acryl. The dark warm gray is for the ground itself, and the bright neutral gray is for the rocks. Agrex Earthshade I use as a shade for the ground, a Nushepti Bone to highlight, the Silicon Gray with Contrast Medium for the rocks, and Game Color Black for the base rims. Now, for the first part of the base, first thing you start off with was your 32mm base. And what I like to do ahead of time is I try to figure out where on the base the Space Marine's feet will go, so that way I can just model around it and make a really detailed base before I actually even start painting the model. Now typically Space Marine feet go on the outsides, so it's easy to just set a rock at the back, feet go on the sides, and then I can set up some effect closer to the edge opposite the rock. Sometimes you can differentiate it a bit, but generally you leave space on both sides. Next comes the priming. Now, as a reminder, this is a different base than the one you just saw. So for priming, it's pretty simple. I just primed the whole thing in Mechanicus Standard Gray. You may notice that the primer didn't exactly take super well all over the rock. You can still see some of that brown. It's honestly not really a problem. That kind of thing is just going to happen, but it's not really a big deal. I know some people will make a big deal out of that, but it's not. The paint will go over just fine. But now on to the base coating. Now this is a base after I've freshly base coated it. So as for the ground, I have coated it with Pro Acryl's dark warm gray and bright neutral gray for the rock. It's a really quick process. I do about 2 coats of each, especially on the rock. On the ground, you could probably get away with 1 coat. You'll notice it kind of has little white spots. Again, not really anything to worry about. None of that will be visible. But yeah, it was very important for me to make sure I mix up the rock and the ground tone. Because really, go outside and look how often is the rocks you find just exact matches for the color of the dirt. So I made sure that those were different colors. But now, on to the shading. And here's the base after it's been shaded. So as you can see, much darker now. What I do for the base itself is I take Agrex Earthshade, and you know how people normally tell you to not let it pool, to move the shade around, don't let it pool? Let it pool. Drown the base in Agrex Earthshade. You really want to darken it and dirty it up, give it a real warm, dark tone to it. And for the rock, I do the opposite. The rock, I take Basilicanum Gray Contrast and I thin it down with contrast medium, at least 1:1, sometimes 2 contrast to 1 basilicanum. But just give it a nice little shade and give it a nice little rock look. But yeah, you want it to be nice and dark for the next steps. And here it is after shading. So, for highlighting. For highlighting, I take the Ushapti bone and I dry brush it onto just the dark warm gray. Really makes it pop, really keeps that really dark underneath, but nice warm bright spots at the top to help break it up, make it stand out a little more. The rock itself I don't actually highlight. You could just go back over it with bright neutral gray as a dry brush, but I kind of like keeping it dulled. But yeah, it's not a very complex base scheme, which is what I like about it. But yeah, next on to the finishing touches. And finally, we're back to this guy. So this is the one I showed at the very beginning. He has a bit different that he actually has 2 rocks on his base and 2 grass tufts. Usually my bases will get 1 grass tuft. So after everything is dry, that's when I'll go in and I'll start putting down the snow. Big piles of it, spread it out in some non-conventional shapes, and also get some excess on your brush, on your texture tool. After this I will show the brushes and tools I use, by the way. And get the excess and just scrape it along the top of the texture paste. Really, just make it look like this is actual snow, stuff being kicked up. And, yeah, 2 grass tufts on this one. Typically I do 1 just because of spacing, but I really modeled this out. This is a sergeant's base. Really spaced it out so you got a nice detailed base. But yeah, so next is the tools. I probably should have showed that at the beginning, but hey, I don't do anything normal. And this is it for my tools. We just got a Citadel texture, I don't know what you call this, tool, brush, stick. Yeah, I use this for putting down my basing and my snow. Nice wider edge and a nice knife-like edge that I actually use the most on bases just to spread it around. This I got from Michael's, it's a hobby store. It's a paint and craft store. It's a synthetic brush. Most of my brushes are synthetic, by the way. And I use this mostly for the basing, the base coating of the ground. And I also use this for the Agrax Earthshade. This is like the equivalent of a Citadel's medium shade brush. I like it. It's a pretty good brush. And then I have a size 1 brush from I don't know what. Yeah, sorry, I don't really actually know. I ordered these off Amazon. Just came in a whole set like this. Again, they're all synthetic. At least I think they are. But pretty good brushes. I like them. And then a Citadel medium dry brush, which only really gets used for the highlighting. But yeah, it's a good brush. Since it's small bases, I don't like using the makeup brushes, just because on small bases it'll overdo it. So I still keep, sorry, it's not a medium dry brush, it's a small dry brush, my bad. But yeah, so be back in a second. But yeah, so here's everything side by side. Just get a closer look, starting with the basing, the texture paste and the rock, to priming, to base coating, to shading, to highlighting, and to all the finer details that really bring it all together. It's a very simple base scheme, but it's one I really like, and I use it for my entire Space Marine range. But let me know what you think, and should have another video coming up pretty soon. Thanks for watching.